Hi, everybody. Welcome to your podcast, Scientist for Fun. I am Shipra, and in this episode, we are going to talk about two questions. First, what is to be a scientist? And second, what do we do as a scientist? This episode is solely dedicated to two groups of audience. One, who is an aspiring scientist? You can be a high school student, you can be an undergrad, you can be a master's, you can be someone in a different country and planning to make a move to a different country for higher education, but you're just curious to know how we work. Like the formulation of toothpaste that you have right now in your hand, the cream that you're trying to apply while you're listening to this podcast is exactly the curiosity I expect from people who do not want to be a scientist but want to really know how these formulations work, how this was developed in a lab before it was commercialized. So I'm not going to show you or give you a lab tour right now, but I'm going to help you understand that if you want to be a scientist and if you want to see how it feels to be a scientist, then I might help you with making the right decision. So, coming back to the question, how does it feel to be a scientist? Well, my answer to this would be a sweet spot going back and forth between being delighted and being exhausted. Why am I saying so? That's because when you set up any experiment, you design any experiment, you pre plan your thing, you troubleshoot. I mean, you do troubleshooting while experiment. But before that, you kind of anticipate, you have an idea that, okay, if I'm setting up this particular experiment, this means these are the problems that I might have or I might encounter while I start doing the experiment. So why not make a list of it? So that's how we start. And that's quite overwhelming because you might have not done that experiment before. You were the first person who is trying to, lead the experiment. And of course, whenever we start any experiment, we make sure we talk to our seniors, to our boss, senior scientist, or XYZ, whosoever your superior is, or the supervisor is, because it's very important for them to know what you're doing. Now, why is it that important? Designing an experiment is fine. It's good to consult people around you. They might have more experience than you, they might have done that before, or even if they might have not done it, they have an idea about setting up an experiment, and that's why they are in that position, right? And whenever you are designing any experiment, you're not doing it, you're just designing it. So it's pretty safe to go back and forth with people around you. Second thing is, when you're done with designing the experiment or like the layout and now you're setting up an experiment, it's very important for you to understand that the drug, the reagent, the whatever you need, for example, if you're using I think electricity or MRI, whatever you're using, how safe it is and how safe you are, because your safety is of utmost importance. If anything happens in the lab, the whole organization, your manager, your PI or supervisor is kind of responsible for it. So please conduct the experiments responsibly, and that's what we do. For example, if I'm trying to set up an experiment in which I'm trying to maybe isolate the retina or brain from any animal model. So, in that case, if I'm new to it, I would not jump into dissection, because the tools that we use to dissect the eyeball, to take the tissue out, focus on one particular nerve or neuron, it's very dangerous because it's so teeny tiny in size, and you might poke yourself. You might poke yourself here and there, and that's not safe for you. So, again, coming back to the point, when you're designing any experiment, make sure you reach out to people, make sure you have an overall idea of what problems you might encounter and how would you tackle it. That's called as troubleshooting. Second, whenever you're setting up any experiment, make sure that you have it well aligned in your mind, and also writing is very important. I have met a couple of researchers, and every people have their own way of working in a lab, but I strongly recommend use pen and paper. You might use your iPad or whatever, like digital documentation technique your laboratory uses or your laboratory uses. But for you, please have a lab notebook. I'm going to show you how it looks like. Actually, I just have it here for you. So, this particular lab notebook, also there's a way to maintain your lab notebook, but yeah, I'll talk about it later on. So this is how your lab notebook should look like. Whatever you have mentioned, whatever you have documented, like done in the experiment, it has to be documented so that if the experiment goes wrong, you can go back and take a look at it. This is a basic good science practice that you do. Okay. And then you write it down, you go back and forth, and you also show the experimental layout, the concentration of drug you're using. You have to mention it here. Why are we doing it? See, if somebody else come to your lab, maybe after 6 months, maybe a year, they might not understand what you did. But when they look back to your raw data, they will have an idea that what you are doing. And in this case, this might save 6 months, this might save a lot of money, and this might save, to be honest, a lot of time for your company or for your academic lab you're working for. This will help you take the lead as a scientist. So that's what we do. Again, if people think that, oh, we are just coming in the lab and we're experimenting and we're going home, absolutely not. Just like you, we attend a lot of meetings. We are answerable to our stakeholders, we're answerable to our supervisor, we are answerable to our seniors. Because when we are working on a project, it's not me who's working. For example, if I'm leading a project because my research is based on cancer, and I'm doing something that's like brain cancer based, I would have interns, I would have undergrads, I would have other fellow researchers who are helping me. So it's always about teamwork because it is not impossible to lead the project all by yourself. But then if you're doing it together, if you go back and forth, this provides a different dynamic to the team and you become really productive. Now, everybody has a different type of working. I prefer doing experiments all by myself, but if somebody is shadowing me, I would love to have that person who can help me with passing the solution and checking the temperature because I do a lot of animal model work. So, making sure that the animals are doing fine. And it depends on the field you want to go. At the same time, our week is divided. Like you can work on weekends if you want to, but choose yourself at least on a weekend and try to relax so that you can be more productive during the weekdays. So have a schedule and try to be on schedule. That's very important because sometimes the experiments, I would tell you, even if you are on experiments, are very unpredictable. You might have written down everything, you have the layout, but still you don't know how the neurons would respond to any particular drug. You don't know how this particular pathway is going to work, right? So in that case, you have to have an hour or two in your hand so that you can go back and forth with the experiment. Second, you have to attend a lot of meetings, as mentioned before. You have your lab meeting where you are addressing your team. What did you do? What is the outcome of the experiment that you did? And the most important thing, why did you set up that experiment? What made you think that this experiment is important? Other than that, just be transparent. Transparency in science is very important. Now, there is difference between being transparent and being confidential. So confidential means, as I mentioned in the starting of the video, I cannot just show you the experiment that I'll be doing today or I did last week. Why? Because I am answerable to a group of people here I'm working with, and I have to be loyal. And anyway, you might not even be interested to see the raw data because it's raw. It would not make any sense to you. And second, transparent means do not fabricate the data. So when I was new, I was told by my first PI, like he was one of the greatest scientists I've ever met, and he told me that even a bad data is a data. So when you do an experiment, you get a bunch of data, right? And that might not make sense right away. So in that case, you'll be like, oh my God, I worked so hard and this particular thing is not working. Still store that data. Organization of data is very, very, very important. My current boss, my current PI has taught me one of the best things. And he said that managing your data is one of the most important thing, even important than setting up experiments. Because if I make a video on setting up an experiment, you can go back, you can take a look, you can start doing it. But if I do not show you or if I do not organize the data, the person who will come after me or who will handle the project after I'm somewhere else, that person will have no idea of what I did for these number of years. And also, it's very good to be accountable for your work that you did. Other than this, we have experiments, we also have a dedicated days for analyzing data. We use a bunch of software like IMRS, like ImageJ, like other softwares, I would say Corel Draw, PrismPad, all these, just to have, good amount of data, which is very clear to communicate. Coming back to the data, if I talk about data, I know I'm doing this experiment, or I'm working on this project for like maybe more than 3 years. So I know every bit of it. But if somebody is new, if I'm talking to someone who is an investor, who is a stakeholder, who is from finance department, field from my department, and if I show them a graph in a presentation, and then I leave, and after 6 months, they are like, I don't know what she did. Because that graph will not stand on its 2 feet. You might have y axis, you might have something, some kind of random bars, anything. And that might not make sense to the other person because he or she is coming from a different field. Always have a summary slide after each data that you present, and also upload it maybe on Drive, Cloud, Box, whatever folder. That helps, even that will help you. You won't believe, I'll share a small experience with you. I was working with one of the technique, and it was more than 2 years, and I was so frustrated because I was unable to standardize that protocol. I tried everything, like every variable, every reagent, going back and forth with the team members. If I'm using any product from any company, I'm talking to the application scientist, trying to understand. They are trying to help me. Then again, I'm not getting what I'm looking for, and it took me 2 years. And I thought that no matter how hard I try, I'm not getting the data. This means this experiment makes no sense. And after 2.5 years, when I kind of understood like every bit of my project, or the part of the project that I was working on that required this particular experiment, showed me that the gene or the protein or the RNA, whatever I'm looking for, is not present in this particular tissue in the brain and in the retina. Rather, its isoform is present, or some other form is present. That means the data that I collected for like last 2.5 years was not a waste. It was something that I was unable to decode, or I was unable to communicate in a meeting or to anyone. So this is why we are here. We will learn how to communicate the scientific data, which is very important, so that if you're working in a cross collaboration with some other team who is like maybe working on some other project, but you need their help or you're trying to help them, this will give you a great context, and this will develop your critical thinking. So when we say, critical thinking, developing critical thinking, you will never understand what critical thinking is unless you do it, because that develops. People say don't do hard work, do smart work. Well, you reach to the smart work once you have done the hard work. If you haven't done the hard work, you will not know how to be smart at it. Because when you're doing the smart work, that means you have been through thick and thin, and now you know everything about the project, about the team working on. And when you are leading the project, you are responsible for the data as well. My interns, my other teammates are trying their best. I believe in them, and they are showing me data, but then it's my responsibility to present it. If I'm leading the project, it's my responsibility to collect the whole data and to communicate. Other than this, we also have a lot of fun. As I mentioned, like every day is not the same, just like any other job. It's pretty dynamic. It's not monotonous. Sometimes when you do experiments like on a repeat, you get bored. You're like, I know what's gonna happen. I know I'm not getting the data, but don't get disheartened. This happens with everybody, and at the end, you definitely have something. Other than this, we have a lot of journal club. Journal club means, so I will go through papers, the research papers, the publication, the research articles that talk a lot about my work, my research, which resembles what I do. And then from there, I will discuss this in the lab meeting. So every member in the lab, they might be working on different kind of project. That's why we have team members. But then we also discuss a lot of projects with each other. So why do we do that? So generally, it's a human tendency to think, oh, this person doesn't have knowledge about it. Why should I discuss this project with him or her? Well, that's where you make the biggest mistake. Why? Because once we are working as a scientist, our job is to dig deep. When we are deep into something, we kind of overlook a lot of things that's on the surface because we are deep into it. But then when you discuss this with a third person, with a mentor who is not related to your project, that person will give you a fresh perspective. And then you will be like, oh, I did not even give a thought to it. Why? Because that's a surface level. Now, the problem with us as scientists is we dig deep, we go deep into it. But then when you are discussing the same thing with a fellow scientist who is not from your field, that person is having a wide view. Because once you get into it, you also had a wide view when you started the project, right? You were trying to oversee everything. But then once you got deep into it, now you forgot about the wide view. But the other person, the other mentor has that idea, and then that person will help you see the wide view or the wide angle, to be honest, about the project. And that opens up a lot of path. So whenever you're in a meeting, try to bring these things up, have agenda, and be very clear, very concise about what you are talking. Other than this, after meetings, after journal clubs where we discuss the latest papers from nature, from science or communication, from engineering, whatever is your field, we talk about it. We also go back and forth with their data. Sometimes you might have heard that, oh, the paper got retracted. Retracted means they fabricated the data, which is absolutely unethical. So you have to keep these things in mind. And we discuss ethics plays very, very, very important role in research. So we'll talk about ethics on a separate video because that is something very important. And euthanizing means killing an animal. So you are like killing would be a bad word. My apology. I would say sacrificing an animal. So when you're sacrificing, people don't care, but I would say you have to care because a creature, an organism, is sacrificing its life so that you can have the drug that you're holding right now. The Tylenol or any drug that the paracetamol that you're having for your headache, for your maybe diabetes, whatever drug you're taking, it is not applied on humans directly. You have no idea how many animals sacrifice their life so that you can have that drug that can help you to cope up with your headache, with your other diseases or discomfort you're having in life. So, yeah, always be grateful for their life that they sacrificed it for someone like us. Now we have journal clubs, as mentioned, we have experiments set up, we have data analysis. We also write papers and publication because scientific writing is very important. No matter what experiment you have conducted, how much of raw data you have, if you are unable to write the report, if you're unable to show what you have done, your whole experiment, your whole data analysis makes no sense. Other than this, we have fun. Fun as in we celebrate birthdays, we showcase our research over there, we make friends, we make a good connection, we often find a best friend, I would say. Other than this, on every Friday, we, depending on the lab you're working in, we go for maybe drinks, snacks, party. And the biggest thing is, hanging out. Like by the end of every month, we go to maybe somewhere for a short trip, maybe a day trip, and we come back, we have fun, we spend time, we get a chance to know our coworkers, not just as a coworkers, but they also become friends. You develop yourself as a scientist in every way, like your personality. But the most important skill that I feel you should have is being someone who is easy to work with. I can be an expert in my field, but if I cannot teach you, or if I cannot show you one experiment, or if I cannot show you the basic things that you should know in a lab, doesn't matter how great of an expert I am. Talking about coachability, if I'm teaching something to someone and that person is intimidated and they have hard time asking questions from me, that means I did not do my job correctly. So if I want to rely on data that is generated by any intern, that is generated by my fellow scientist, generated by someone, and if I'm not able to trust them with the data, that means I did not train them well to be a scientist, and this is the reason I am unable to trust their data. Now, again, we all are adults, and there are things that come from our own experience. When you work for different companies, when you work in different labs, you come with your set of experience and your behavior. So that is something different that we'll talk about in other video other than ethics. But yes, that's all we do. For example, everybody has a different way of working. Behind me, you can see the whiteboard. So I have a habit of writing everything. I try to write anything and everything so that because I have a tendency to forget things, so I write, like I maintain a lab notebook. I am not very kind of iPad and phone person, so I prefer writing using like pen and paper. I write it on the board so that whenever I sit here, I kind of take a look and I'm like, okay, these are the things that I need to do, which is like of utmost importance. So yeah, that's how it is about being a scientist. And the best part is when you go to a conference, when you show your research, people take interest, and when general audience understand what you do, that's the biggest achievement you have as a scientist. If a 5-year-old and if your grandma can understand what you're doing in a lab, Congratulations. So I hope this information will help you a lot in making a decision whether you want to be a scientist or not. And if you want to know more about it, because as I said, it's always going to be a lot of information and it'll be hard for me to, squeeze everything in like 20, 30 minutes. So if you have any questions, my email is there. Please shoot me an email and I will get back to every individual because I want you to be a scientist. If you want to be a scientist, I'm there to help you out anytime, anywhere, as soon as I can get back to you. Until then, take care. Do let me know if you have any questions, which I'm sure you do have a bunch of questions. And take care of yourself. All the best with whatever you are doing. And remember, you are important.